What's the strangest thing you've ever found in your home that you have no explanation for? My sister worked night shift. She came home to find the homeless guy who lived in the neighbor's yard asleep in her bed. Her dogs were sleeping with him. A good AWW, how cute scene for the movies. A real WTF dogs fired moment in real life. When my parents bought this house, it came with this quite long cable attached to the wall in my room. At the end of the cable, there is a button. It's a red button. Nothing happens when I press on it. I have no idea what it is. Sounds like a call assistance button for a handicapped person. I found an exact clone of my watch behind the fridge when I moved it to clean. It's literally the exact same watch I was wearing on my wrist, which is weird because that watch was my great grandma's. It was bought sometime in the 1940s and has an unusual Art Deco design. By some crazy coincidence, the previous renter must have had the same exact vintage watch. Just be careful around time travel machines and you should be okay. I came home from a long day of work to find my toaster on the counter with toaster strudel all cooked and ready to eat. I didn't have any toaster strudel in my house at the time. I still have no idea how that happened. Bruh, you've been robbed. And that thief got hungry while he did it. My favorite part about all of these is that somewhere out there is a person with a perfectly good reason for each and every one of these random items respectively. I found a latex Richard Nixon mask in my closet. No idea where it came from. Now I use it to make impressions and scare the crap out of drunk friends. Sometimes I mow the yard with it on to make my neighbors wonder what the heck is wrong with me. Dying laughing thinking of you just casually mowing your lawn with that on. Totally normal. One morning my wife found a note in our kitchen that read, "I was in your house. It's been over 4 years and we still don't know if it was a friend messing with us or some creeper." The dogs were immediately fired. One time I found a French-inspired powdered wig in my closet that I have never seen before in my life. Safe to say I am still really confused. I'd start wearing it. People, I went to get the mail, which takes all of 2 minutes, so I didn't lock my door. I come back and 2 girls and 1 guy are sitting around my table chatting and drinking my beer. They looked at me and asked if I was another friend of Steve. I don't remember my exact response, but I find out they were going to their buddy Steve's place. But they got the wrong building and wound up at my place. Steve was on a beer run, so they let themselves in. Nice enough people, and I actually hung out with them a few times after that. But I definitely make sure to lock my door these days. Steve bought me a 12er for my troubles. Nuts for hanging out with them after. I think I'd have a meltdown if I walked into my house and there's a bunch of strangers. One day I left my garage door open for 10-20 minutes while I was doing yard work and back. I came back and someone had obviously been in my garage, but only my Cucina ice cream machine was stolen. Funny thing is that the machine was stolen, but the bowl that you needed to make ice cream was in the freezer. They didn't get that, so they wouldn't be able to make ice cream with it. Fast forward 8 months later and my wife got me a whole new ice cream machine. Now I have 1 ice cream makers and 2 bowls. Fast forward about 6 months after that, I left my garage door opened again and walked in to close it. Right in the middle of the garage was my original ice cream maker machine. Now, I have 2. I'm going out on a limb and guessing you have an butthole neighbor who stole it, realized their mistake, then sheepishly returned it. Brother and I found a secret basement in our house. Crawl in to find bullet casings all over the ground and a newspaper clipping tacked to the wall with an old lady's face on it. It was her obituary, but she had died only a few years before we found it. Nobody in the family knew her, and we had lived in this house for almost a decade at that point. We boarded up the opening after that. Hate to break it to you, but someone in your family may be a murderer. Oh. Found a knife on my wife's vanity. Not a bad one. I actually wanted to keep it, but instead we gave it to the police and installed a security system. My cousin found bullet casings in her jewelry box once. Changed all her locks after that. A box of cornstarch with an expiration 1989. Our house was built in 1991. I keep it for, well, not sure why really, and my wife wants us to throw it out. It's part of your family heirloom now. When cleaning out my grandmother's room after we had to place her in a nursing home for long-term care, I found an afro pick made of black plastic in the shape of a black power fist. Also my high school class ring, which was weird because it had been stolen out of my locker in high school. My husband had this specific set of mason jar drinking glasses. He loved these things. They were a relatives from Tennessee that he inherited. We always wanted to get more than the set of 4 that we had, but could never find them anywhere because they were kind of unique looking. Well, one day I broke one while doing dishes. We felt pretty awful about it, but life moved on. A week later, however, my husband was going through the cabinet to retrieve a glass and there it was, a 4th drinking jar. Where did it come from? Now, in the week that it happened, nobody had come over and neither of us had replaced it. We definitely only had 4 to start and they were pretty unique and difficult to find, so ghost drinking glass, we still have them today, so hey, that's awesome. It worked out for us. Smith & Wesson revolver in our futon. No idea how it got there or whose it was when found. Called the police and apparently it's not of great concern. They got the serial and told us they'd contact us if it turned up stolen or used in a crime. Never called back. Gave it to my grandfather, now he keeps it in his car. I've told this story before and people are critical of me for giving my grandfather a possibly stolen revolver, but he's the retired sheriff of my hometown so he knows the story, as does his old department. I lost my wallet. I tore the house apart looking for it. I searched parking lots where I last shopped to no avail. I came home feeling defeated. The wallet was on my dresser, which was the first place I looked. I think my druggy ex-best friend stole it, got remorseful and put it back. I never asked him about it. Similar story, but with my car keys. One night I was supposed to go out and meet a friend but couldn't find my keys. I tore apart my whole apartment with no luck, so I just stayed home and went to sleep. I woke up in the morning and they were in the middle of my bedroom floor. Really freaked me out. I found a really tiny mug, the size of a thimble, on the floor in our bathroom with the name Leslie on it. My husband and I have lived in our house for 3 years. We have no idea where it came from. Borrowers. A toy lightsaber. This was right after the latest Star Wars came out. I live with my wife and my dog. No kids. The dog is never outside unsupervised, and the thing just showed up one day. I think my wife is a Jedi. Dude. A Jedi cannot marry. Pack your crap and get the heck out of your house. When I was in 6th grade, I found a small, plastic baggie in my backpack that I had never seen before. It was filled with a white substance. It looked suspicious, so I reported it to the office when I got to school, and police ended up coming and talking to me. They started asking if I sell drugs and I got so scared I started crying. They realized I'm innocent and left with the bag. I never found out what was in the bag or how it got into my backpack. Possibly a prank. Possibly someone needed to not get caught really quick and just slipped it in there. Possibly someone had a similar backpack to yours. Or maybe you were always addicted to hard drugs. I found a very sentimental little doll thing that had been missing over 15 years. It had never been in our house, owned 10 years, and since it was lost, we had been through 2 moves, devastated when it was gone. It fell out of a cabinet on me shortly after my husband suddenly died. Beyond happy to have it back because it meant so much to me, but freaked wondering how it got in a cabinet I use all day every day to fall on my head at 11 PM at night. I think it's explainable, but it was freaking weird all the same. When I was about 10, my friend gave me a really pretty sterling silver ring for a birthday present. I loved it and wore it everywhere, but because my fingers are ridiculously thin I lost it. 9 years later I'm home from uni for the holidays and helping my mum dig up potatoes in the veggie patch. I pull out a potato and on the end is this freaking sterling silver ring that had grown into it. Our detective skills told us that I had lost it in my bed one night and it became caught up in the bed sheets. When my mum washed and hung the bedding, the ring must have fallen out into the veggie patch where it lay undiscovered for nearly a decade. I lost my wedding ring whilst mucking out my horse. I searched but gave up as it was literally looking for a needle in a crappy haystack. A short while later my dog had an x-ray at the vet's due to a stomach blockage. My wedding ring was in his stomach. He has a taste for socks and fine jewelry. I'm pretty late to the thread, but I'll post my story anyway. because none of my friends ever believe me. The year was 1999. I was about to graduate high school and had only a few weeks left until summer. I woke up one Wednesday morning, got ready for school like always, and went downstairs to snag some breakfast. My mom, being an only parent, was already gone to work, but she usually left me something for breakfast beforehand. I go into the kitchen and see a plate of cooked bacon on the counter, just like a whole package's worth of bacon. While this was unlike my mom, it was usually a plate of eggs, bacon, ham, whatever in the microwave, in relatively normal portions. It was a huge pile of bacon, so I just shrugged and nommed a handful on my way out. I also noticed that the frying pan was still on the stove, and this was, again, unusual. My mom was always sort of a neat freak, especially about dishes. I passed it off quickly, thinking, she was probably running late this morning or something, and headed to class. Cut to that afternoon, when I get home to my mom first apologizing for not having time to cook breakfast for me that morning. She had been running a bit late, after all, but that was no excuse to waste bacon and leave out dirty dishes. She still doesn't believe I didn't make the bacon. None of my friends believe I didn't make the bacon, but I swear on my Steam library that I didn't make that bacon. In my garage is a medium-sized black wall wart plugged into an outlet. It has a single grey cord coming out the bottom, which passes through a hole in the wall to the basement section on the other side. It runs to the ceiling, snakes through several half-inch holes in 3 or 4 joists, then turns to follow a copper water pipe. About halfway down the 8-foot pipe, the wire is stripped for an inch or two, wedged into one of the pipe hanger brackets, and forced to touch the pipe. One day I became brazen enough to unplug it from the wall. That evening, I woke up thinking I had just heard something dangerous, but I couldn't remember in my 4 AM stupor. I turned on the lights, poked my head out my bedroom door, saw and heard nothing. I turned off the lights and got settled into bed, only to be started by what sounded like someone beginning to speak and then stopping. It was loud, sharp, and followed by absolute silence, like a harsh sound made by someone trying to enter an intense conversation. I sat bolt upright. My heart pounded in my throat. A minute went by like a stick in a frozen creek. I worked up the courage to get out of bed, quietly step over to the door, and as my head passed through the door frame, a louder, more treble, and a little less human sounding. I turned on all the lights. Nothing there. I creeped down the stairs, and for 5 minutes, sat at the bottom step wondering if I was going insane. Then, impossibly loud, like over a megaphone, the distinct sound of someone tapping the talk button on a two-way radio, cell. It came from the doorbell speaker that generates the tone when someone rings. I plugged the wall wart back in, waited 15 minutes, and never heard the sound again. TLDR, mystery wall wart in garage prevents my doorbell speaker from sporadically making the sound of an alien clearing its throat and scaring me shitless in the dark of night. Your home has a bad ground, so someone grounded it through the wall wart to the pipe. You need to get an electrician out to check your breaker panel and ground continuity. It's probably not what what looking for, but my engagement ring is a sapphire center stone. Not a big fan of diamonds. I have a pretty physical job and broke one of the prongs that hold in the stone without realizing it. Soon after, I woke up and had an empty setting on my finger. Sapphire gone. We looked everywhere in our small 1000 SF home, emptied the vacuum bag, dug through trash cans, etc. Nothing. We decided I must have lost it in the lake when I'd been swimming boating the day before. Fast forward a little over 1 year, it's our 10th wedding anniversary. My sew has been laid off for a while and I'm supporting the household. I have secretly been saving up for a cruise for a couple of years. We go on an extravagant vacation, my treat, and he's a bit sad that he has no gift for me. I didn't care. I was just super happy we had a special trip for our 10th. I didn't need a present. We had to go on the trip the week before our anniversary, so we got home the day of our actual anniversary. My sew goes inside first while I'm collecting bags and stuff from car. He comes out with a funny look on his face, reaches out his clenched hand, says happy anniversary and opens his fist. My sapphire is in his palm. He says he went inside, noticed his shoe was untied, sat down in a chair to tie his laces and looked up, Saw my sapphire just sitting there on the floor on the day of our anniversary after it had been missing for over a year and we'd been out of town for over a week. Must have gotten caught in between one of the gaps in the old hardwood floor and eventually worked its way out. IDK. TLDR spouse finds missing engagement ring gemstone on day of 10th anniversary after it was missing for over 1 year. That's a cute story. What luck that the stone avoided the trash can for a year. I came home from a night out with friends. My roommate was home already asleep. I woke up the next day and found a glass with flowers in water. Figured it was from his boyfriend, who he had been out with that night. The glass sat there for a few days before I finally asked when he was going to get rid of them. He looked at me and said, I thought those were yours. He asked his boyfriend. I asked my friends. No one remembers getting flowers that night. This was 8 years ago, and we still can't explain it. I found a Wisconsin Badgers shirt in my wardrobe when I was in kindergarten. I have no idea how it got there and neither do my parents. It just showed up one day. I used it for PJs for about 3 years. Some guy hid in your closet when your dad came home unexpected. Ask your ma again. A little plastic baggie taped to the wall behind a poster. I had moved that poster to another wall in my room a month prior and there was no bag or tape anywhere. Still have no idea where it came from. The Shore Stash redemption. I moved into a very old house, built in 1890. The person before me was in his late 70s and died in the home. Naturally, after it was cleaned out, some weird stuff was left behind. I found an old screwdriver with a wooden handle with duct tape all over the handle. I took the tape off and found a fake. Took it to a jeweler diamond in the hollowed out handle. It's totally fake. Just leave it here and I'll throw it away for you. A very strange ceramic head appeared in a basement closet one day. The room was a game room so the closets were opened every so often. Last year we bought a small place from an old woman, who has since died. We've been renovating the place and we've found dozens of super long, beige, fake fingernails all over the place. Behind baseboards, in all of the carpets and flower beds, in vents, buried in the cement cracks in the driveway, and in a lot of the cupboards. Sometimes I'll find them in places I've looked hundreds of times. It's creepy. She also put carpet freaking everywhere. We had to remove 30-year-old carpet from every cupboard, closet and drawer, from under the kitchen sink, in doors and windows. She also had a thing for AstroTurf and about a third of our yard was covered in it. She also covered her outdoor furniture in it. Old lonely people, dude. They got to entertain themselves with something. I live in New England. My house is 300 plus years old. Down in the basement, which is still to this day dirt floor with coal dust everywhere, there is a door set in the wall which seemingly goes to nowhere. When I was a curious 15-year-old I decided to try and open it. It took a lot of strength but eventually I was able to get it open. Inside was about 4 feet of tunnel and a cave and that clearly showed that the tunnel went further. It ran in the direction of the house across the street from mine, which is also 300 years old. Never figured out the reason behind it but thought it might have had something to do with the Underground Railroad. I got confused because I missed the new in New England and was wondering what the Underground Railroad had to do with the English. Not my story, but my father's. When he was a kid, my grandmother was a single mom and could barely make ends meet. But one Christmas she saved up enough money to buy my father a miniature pool table when he was 10. Like a 10-year-old, he lost the 8 ball, couldn't find it, and the toy was eventually discarded. 40 years later, my grandmother had passed away and we are doing one last sweep of the house to make sure nothing is left behind before the new owners moved in. My dad goes into the basement, which has a slightly pitched cement floor, and that freaking 8 ball is the only thing in the room, sitting in the middle of the floor. No idea how it got there, where it came from, or why it didn't roll away from the sloped floor. Found under a rug in my grandparents' house, a necklace emblem shaped like an Easter Island head. It smiles on one side, frowns on the other. Reminds me of Greg Brady. Watch out, it could be cursed. Don't go surfing with it on. I found a blank videotape that was in a sleeve box with what I recorded on the tape. Only the tape had some family's home movies, including a wedding. I had no idea who they were. My parents discovered a leak on the roof of their house after a week of rainfall. My dad went up to the second floor to patch it up or something soon after the weather got better. I say floor because it's not really an attic. There's no lights, windows, or even a staircase leading up to it. You have to drag a ladder inside to climb up to the place. Because of this, it's not used for storage or anything. The only reason to go up there is when situations like the one above happen. Anyways, my dad goes up to the attic for maybe the third time ever since received there. I hear him call out about finding something. I could tell from his tone that it was something that wasn't supposed to be there. He climbs down the ladder and shows us these handmade figures of people and says they were laid upon a blow tarp with a tripod in front of them. My guess is that whoever lived there before was filming something there in the dark. Maybe some kind of witchcraft. IDK. We lived there for about 9 years before he found those things up there. It could have belonged to an art student. My fiance hides ceramic deformed bunnies in people's houses and around town for a project. Stop animation would explain figures plus tripod as well. Artists are weird and some do abandoned projects. At some point I found like a Chinese farming hat in my closet. Like the pointy round ones that are made of straw. I'm Canadian, white and have no idea where it came from. There's a little Chinese farmer living in your attic. A tiny blue ceramic frog, just sitting in the middle of my counter. That was about 16 years ago. I still have it, and I'm actually pretty fond of it. It sits on my windowsill about my sink and reminds me of summer. When I was in middle school I found several unopened cans of Faygo in my bedroom garbage can after my family returned from a weekend away. My parents never bought Faygo, and the girl who was watching our dogs had no reason to go in my room. Oh no. Sounds like someone let a Jagallo in. A neighbor once sleepwalked into my house, used the bathroom and then continued sleeping in my bed. I slept on the couch and she woke up the following morning, very confused and with no recollection of how she got there. When I grew up in Philly we had some hideaway spaces in the eaves, really old house. I found a wetsuit and weight belt. We kids cleaned the bugs and crap out of it and used to put it on and take baths when my mom wasn't around. It was hysterical. I found a man on hand and knee vomiting onto my kitchen floor. I thought I was home alone and had never seen the man before in my life. It was 9:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. When I was about 10, I found what seemed to be a belt on the floor of my closet. It was made entirely of large coins with the Liberty Lady on them that said something about the pursuit of happiness on them, silver dollars not sure, chained together with metal links on top and bottom. I had no idea WTF it was or where it came from. My parents also said they had no clue whatsoever. They took it and I never saw it again. Probably threw it out. I wish I still had it because it was such a mystery. I was really hungover one morning and woke up to a black bag clattering around inside my room. Thought I was dreaming still. Quickly figured out that it had come down the chimney somehow, but there was a minute of extreme consternation. It was pretty relaxed though. It walked with me all the way to the front door and flew away when it got to edge of the porch. Not in our home, but we were digging a hole in a friend's yard. Cause we were 8, so why not? About 3 feet down we found a Star Wars Stormtrooper action figure. This was in the mid-90s, so he had to have been from the original trilogy. I recently found a very long blonde hair. Just one. A single hair. It was just lying there. It's been over a year since I've invited a woman to come inside my apartment for the night. How did it get there? If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.